it's ridiculous to hear that there are people who are chanting for freedom, that are saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And there are literally people who are saying, kill them all, murder all of them, level it, take them all out. And those two things are being equated to each other. One is calling for freedom of all people, for equality and for democracy. And the other is literally calling for genocide. And we're having to fight those two battles at the same time. I've never understood or fathomed how those two things could even, no one's calling out the genocidal speak, but everyone is calling out the conversation about freedom.
Alana, thank you so much for coming on the Empire Files. It's really great to talk to you. Your family is probably the most well-known Palestinian family in the world. Your sisters, Gigi and Bella, are supermodels, very well-known. Your dad is a real estate mogul. You, your sister Marielle, and your brother Anwar are all fashion icons. There is so much pressure on your family to stay silent about what Israel is doing, but you have been very vocal. You've been posting almost daily about the genocide going on in Gaza. And Alana, you've never done an interview about this. And so I really appreciate you taking the time. I really appreciate you going on my platform to talk to me.
I mean, I appreciate you, Abby. I think I was a fan of yours in a lot of ways. How outspoken you were about Palestine, all the advocacy that you've done, the documentaries, all the interviews that you've done. It was inspirational for me, to be totally honest. And seeing a lot of the things that you did, and not just because we've become friends and because I'm here and talking to you, truly, I know that there are people who've said to me, the way that I spoke out has made them feel more comfortable about their advocacy. And you did that for me. So I appreciate you, and I'm glad to be here.
That's amazing. I'm incredibly honored to hear that. I guess, Alana, let's just start by talking about how you've been feeling over the course of the last couple weeks, ever since October 7th.
Truthfully, I mean, even now, I just want to cry all the time. God, I didn't think I was going to start crying already.
It's so hard.
I just want to cry.
Yeah.
I think it's a horrible, I want to be strong. I am strong. I think, my family is really strong. I come from a very strong stock. I'm Palestinian and Irish. So fighting for freedom is literally coursing through my blood. And I think I get a lot of it from both sides of my family. I got this amazing power from being a Palestinian. And I also have this kind of broad and beautiful lineage of speaking towards truth to power and liberation from my Irish side as well. So I think since October 7th, all I've really felt like doing was just speaking. It's been this mixture of grief and beauty in that I feel on a constant basis, I've never seen anything more horrific than what's gone on since October 7th. But at the same time, I've also never seen more beautiful solidarity for Palestinian people. And it has been amazing to see. And I'm so grateful and thankful that it hasn't just been falling on deaf ears as it has for the last 75 years.
Right. It is. That's a good way to put it. It's both horrifying and also inspiring to see just this global movement emerge despite the media completely lying. I mean, just in lockstep with the Israeli government. It is atrocious, to say the least. Alana, your family has also been targeted and attacked by Zionists recently. I remember when we were talking before all of this unfolded, but then after it did, you told me, you're like, look, I got a new number. because we got doxxed. All of our numbers got released. We were threatened, sent death threats. We were harassed. That must have been really scary.
It was. It's kind of par for the course. I do think that, to say that we're the only people who have this happen would be a large understatement. There's an entire website, multiple, dedicated to doxing anyone who speaks out in solidarity of Palestinian people. Canary Mission has been around for years. I think for me and my family, I won't speak for everyone, but for me, it's a badge of honor. If they're, looking to silence me, it means I'm saying something truthful and something they don't want people to hear. So I'm willing to change my number every week if that's what I have to do. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is not getting the truth out. And so it's important to me that, that doesn't stop me, and it never will. And I do want people to know that that doesn't scare my family and myself. We will continue to speak out and speak out in favor of the truth.
I mean, the Israeli government absolutely hates your family. I mean, it's crazy. Like every day, I just feel like they're so obsessed with your family. I see like Netanyahu addressing like members of your family. It's totally insane.
I mean, there are special envoys, I feel like, just supposedly, about anti-Semitism, and their whole job, it feels like, is just speaking about my family. So it's been kind of interesting to watch. It feels ridiculous considering there is real anti-Semitism in the world. There are people who really are out there and do really hate Jewish people and aren't just speaking out against the Israeli government, which a large percentage of the Israeli citizens are doing. So for there to be special envoys that are just speaking out about Palestine, I think is really missing the point. The point being that there are people who actually mean to hurt Jewish people, and the Palestinian people are not those people.
Yeah, I think that we've seen that be exposed pretty well over the last month, is, like organizations like the Anti-Defamation League. It really is all about protecting Israel. It's not actually about combating anti-Semitism around the world. They keep citing these statistics saying that there's an uptick of anti-Semitism. And what they include in those statistics, Alana, is simply pro-Palestine demonstrations that chant certain slogans like Free Palestine. I guess just the idea of freeing an occupied people is threatening genocide, apparently, to the Jewish nation. It is extremely cynical and disingenuous and horrifying, frankly, when you step back and look at how all of this is being manipulated and exploited and masked to actually, we're talking about actual anti-Semitism that is on the rise around the world, but this is not what this is. This is people who are in solidarity. These are anti-racists.
I think also what's important to say is that it definitely, the term has lost strength in its, equation to the Free Palestine movement. And as well, I think that the liberation of the occupied is also the liberation of the occupier. And I think that that's something that people forget, that when you put yourself in a position like Israel has, where they're speaking for the entire Jewish community, which many anti-Zionists take offense to, that you are putting yourself as a community in the position of being an occupier. And that is not a great position to be in. That is definitely putting the Jewish people, I think, as a whole, in a poor position. And obviously, it puts Palestinian people in a much poorer position, a horrible position. But it's locking those two things in place: the occupied and the occupier. And I just think that there's a possibility of freeing both people.
Couldn't agree more. Israeli Jews will have a place, as a very important place in the post-apartheid one state, which I think is where this is all going and has to go in order for everyone to be equal. And that canard is really falling apart, especially when you see Israeli officials writing op-eds in Israeli publications saying, denounce your Judaism. Alana, denounce it because you're not a Jew anymore if you are participating in these protests. And we're seeing actually on the front lines, organizations like Jewish Voices for Peace taking such an important, strong stand, consisting of tens of thousands of people doing direct actions. And their response to this is, well, you're no longer Jewish.
It's honestly insanity. It's ridiculous. And that's anti-Semitism to me.
Yes.
I think that is, if you don't think that silencing Jewish voices because there are anti-Zionist Jewish voices is an anti-Semitism, then I don't really understand anti-Semitism. Truthfully, I think it's ridiculous. It's honestly, it's insane. We should have a conversation truthfully, and I think people are opening their eyes to the vast difference between Judaism and Zionism, and that they aren't interconnected, that they have nothing to do with each other. One is a political movement and one is a peaceful and beautiful religion. So I think it's ridiculous to hear that there are people who are chanting for freedom, that are saying, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And there are literally people who are saying, kill them all, murder all of them, level it, take them all out. And those two things are being equated to each other. One is calling for freedom of all people, for equality and for democracy. And the other is literally calling for genocide. And we're having to fight those two battles at the same time. I've never understood or fathomed how those two things could even, no one's calling out the genocidal speak, but everyone is calling out the conversation about freedom.
It's the most ludicrous false equivalency, because it's like one side is committing genocide in front of the world and the other side, they're just claiming that they want to, and that's why they have to commit genocide against them. It's like, I feel like I'm losing my mind. But Alana, you said something so important, which is that your family has a target on your back from the Israeli government. And it's not even because of how openly, you guys are talking about the situation. It's because you are proud, popular, charismatic Palestinians. That is the threat, because just existing as proud Palestinians takes away from the narrative that all Palestinians must be dehumanized, must be demonized in order to expel them all. You must have so many crazy stories about not just the Israeli lobby and not just Israeli media officials, but I mean, just anyone who's appendages of that apparatus trying to smear you guys, basically destroy your livelihoods. Can you share any?
Sure. I mean, I think it's been going on for so long at this point that it feels like commonplace. And I know that sounds really bad, but I've become quite used to it. I can't even imagine the amount of friends. And the irony being, I've always been Palestinian. I'm not living in solidarity with the Palestinian people. I didn't just come out as a Palestinian. I've always been Palestinian. We've never been a family who were afraid to say we were Palestinian. And I have to be honest, there are a lot of families that, made the decision when they immigrated, especially to the U.S., which the way that U.S. functions has said, we're Lebanese or we're Jordanian, only to protect themselves from being targeted or seen as anything else, because the equation of Palestine to terrorism has been so ingrained, especially in the U.S., and it is insanity. It's totally, I mean, I have a million stories about it. I'm trying to think of what would be like one of the relevant stories. When I went to Israel, I was strip searched multiple times. I was harassed for many hours every single time I went there. I mean, I'm kind of getting off topic, but truthfully, I think there is just a lot of mental gymnastics that goes into trying to shut us down in my family. It's, saying that we're wearing keffiyeh, so we're supporting Hamas, saying that because we chant from the river to the sea, we want all Jewish people to go into the sea, which that one really like blows my mind. So whatever is possible to say, they've said it, leaking our phone numbers on Telegram groups, whatever it is. We've had death threats, all sorts of things. And truthfully, it's annoying. It's frustrating, but is it quieting? No. Is it silencing? Definitely not. It gives me strength to know that if enough people are worried about what I'm saying holds a lot of truth and a lot of power.
It was just crazy. I saw I think it was Gigi posted just something that denounced October 7th, like everyone does, and then said something. It was a very innocuous post, and I just saw the actual account of Israel posting all this crazy shit about it, screenshotting and trying to just call her out multiple times. It's like this is what you're focused on while you're committing a genocide. You're literally focused on the Hadids. It's just unbelievable.
If we're going to talk about the equation of war, what I found really interesting in all of this is this conversation about the fact that it's a war. Mm-hmm. If it's a war, you think that what the Israeli government's social media page would be focusing on is attacking a very I care about life post. It's about painting all people. And this is a broad spectrum. I mean, there are a lot of celebrities who've come out and just said, what has happened is horrible. What is continuing to happen in Gaza is horrible. And those people are being painted by Israel as Hamas supporters, as terrorist supporters, as dangerous people. And I think it's indicative of any time we've seen a genocide in the world, anytime historically we've seen basically fascism, is the shutting down of free speech. Any conversations about the other side having any intrinsic human capacity is completely shut down. I also do believe that the propaganda is so strong that a lot of these people are really not seeing any other voices besides the ones they've been programmed to see. So, and Eve Barlow or Noah Tishby, those people who are, propagating this idea that they are defending Israel, that they're defending the entire Jewish community, that this is only a targeted attack on Hamas, that, the civilians are human shields, and that they are freeing us.
It's like they want Palestinians to be silent victims, be respectful victims of genocide and occupation.
That is also the big power and the kind of, that is the problem with saying we just want peace. Why doesn't everyone want peace? We get browbeaten a lot for not calling for peace all the time. And I do think, Palestinians are peaceful people. We want peace. But asking a occupied people to call for peace is to say, lay down and take this silence.
Yep. Accept your fate as just perpetually subjugated. And that's exactly what they want from you. And I think you bring up an important point, which is now there's kind of this new phase. It's always been there. People have always lost their jobs, sponsorships for speaking out about Israeli aggression. But now there is a new phase after October 7th, where now the branding has become, are you a Hamas sympathizer or not? And we even saw pro-Palestine marches right afterward to stand in solidarity with what we knew was going to be a very genocidal onslaught in Gaza, as saying they're pro-Hamas demonstrations, even from the likes of some progressives in Congress. If you dare to criticize Israel's response, and even worse, like we said, I mean, the anti-Semitic label is still branded on you if you dare to talk about the root of the violence, the siege, and the occupation. And then there's the constant gaslighting by Western media. I just can't even fathom what it's like as a Palestinian, because this has been going, we've talked about this before. It's been going on since 9/11. It's always been conflated with terrorism forever. But it's ramped up to such an egregious level where you are told as a Palestinian, no, Israel, see, don't you understand? Israel's not actually committing genocide. Hamas is committing self-genocide. The Palestinian people are doing this to themselves. They're blowing up their own hospitals. They're using kids as human shields. And the latest horrifying image that's come out, where there's 37 NICU premature babies that had to be ripped out of their incubators and covered with foil on the ground. And I had some crazy psychopath tell me Hamas is using these babies as human shields. Yeah. And it's like, how does this propaganda stick? It's the most dehumanizing old racist trope in the book.
That's the craziest part, I think, about it. And I think it's been the most frustrating part as a Palestinian and for Palestinians, is that we've just been screaming, look at us as we're humans. Don't we deserve human rights? Don't we deserve even the basic human rights? We've been screaming that for so long, but it has been this level of propaganda has been mind-boggling to see in real time the way that this propaganda machine works. To see that you'll see children leaving a pediatric ward in northern Gaza, and they're trying to leave white flags in hands with a few remaining doctors, and the IDF is shooting at them. They were told to evacuate. And as they're trying to evacuate, as what they were told, they are being shot at. Now they have to go back into the hospital where they were just told to evacuate. Now they're scared to leave or stay. This is being rolled out to a Zionist audience as this is Hamas shooting at them. What does Hamas gain by shooting Palestinian people? Like, where's the logic gone? I feel like no one is understanding. Logic is completely left the building. And we are just dealing with this onslaught of cognitive dissonance. People really do not want to believe that the things that they have been led to believe their entire lives could possibly be wrong, could possibly mean that a state that they've supported is committing a genocide in front of them, killing babies. They would much rather believe that these people who kind of look like the people who did 9/11 are the ones who are doing this. It makes them feel it's much easier for them to go to sleep at night. And this has been going on for a very long time. The dehumanization of Arabs, especially the Islamophobia, the dehumanization of Muslims, complete erasure of the fact that there used to be a large Christian population in Gaza. It's almost down to nothing at this point. The amount of Christians who've been murdered. But the dehumanization of Palestinians has been built into the dehumanization of Muslims so that they can do all of these horrible things to the Middle East and get away with it. Truly. It's horrible to watch. I don't think that anyone was ready for this to be the way in which the world saw what was going on in Palestine.
Yeah. The lies, the fantasies that are being peddled by Israeli media with US media in tow. I mean, not even Israeli media, actually. Let me correct that, because Israeli media is proudly declaring that every civilian dead, which there are over 4,000 children, thousands still buried under the rubble. The Israeli media is actually proudly declaring that every civilian dead is a terrorist that they've killed. They have a tracker going live. Meanwhile, Biden and the rest of the embarrassing stenographers that call themselves journalists are just repeating the fact that we cannot trust the civilian death toll because it's Hamas run. Hamas is the government. And you're right, the logic falls apart because it's all about dehumanizing brown people to the point where they're such barbaric animals that they just kill their own. Yep. And they just throw babies in the front of bullets. mind-blowing that you can think that every human life is not precious and that every family doesn't want their children to die, that they cherish their children's lives. And when you're looking at like they told everyone to flee from the north to the south, and that Israel basically told everyone, if you're just still stuck in the north, then you are essentially going to be lumped in with terrorists and you are fair game. All of the doctors that are still, people in hospitals can't leave. They cannot flee. The doctors stayed, Alana, these heroic, selfless doctors that stayed, put their bodies on the line, and they are getting bombed because they said, there was one just on Democracy Now!, his last remaining words that will stick with me till the day I die, where he just said, I did not go to medical school for over a decade to leave my patients. I am staying. And he died. And that is what we're dealing with right here. And the audacity to say that it's Palestinians' fault, that it's Hamas's fault, as we're seeing a genocide unfold in real time, be live streamed by the victims. I have never seen such horrors. And Israel is scared that they're losing the narrative, Alana, because no matter what the media says, people are waking up. You look at generationally, the younger you are, the more you disbelieve the corporate media narrative, which is great. And they are so desperate to get Hollywood on board. Like, I don't know if you just saw this, where Gal Gadot, their favorite celebrity that they trot out there because everyone else is kind of really. They were so desperate. They had all these celebrities sign on to that stupid letter condemning Hamas for what Israel's crimes are. And I was actually really taken aback and surprised to see a lot of names on that letter. And I was horrified, frankly.
I have to be honest, I truthfully don't believe that those people knew what they were signing on to. I do think that there are a lot of people who were disgusted by what was going on in Gaza, but also, rightfully wanted to condemn what they felt was like a horrible act of terror. And understandably, a lot of people do not have the grand scope. This isn't functioning in a vacuum. You have to really understand what's going on. And it's not complicated, but it's been made to seem complicated. And if you feel like it's too complicated, you may not really understand. So I get that.
Yeah.
As for the doctors, I think it is so, what's so mind-boggling for me is going from COVID, where we were literally standing on our, outside our doors, clapping for, spending an hour clapping for doctors and nurses, and people were dedicating their time to bringing food to essential workers. We're now painting essential workers as terrorists and allowing a government to murder them for wanting to stay with their patients. Like, let that sink in. I think that I just don't understand how the world can vacillate this way, from believing that doctors and children are important and need to be safe, that we're all going to mask up to make sure that, people are safe, and then going all the way to the other side where it's like, oh, fuck these people. They can die too if they don't want to move from the hospital where they've been trying to evacuate, where there are snipers outside who will probably shoot them if they try to leave. Gazans can't even bury their dead because they can't go outside to take them in the north. These are people who can't move. They have nowhere to go. A lot of the people who haven't left are disabled. They're elderly. They have children, small children, and they can't walk the 5 to 10 hours to the south. I think people are really losing the plot in not understanding the ramifications. Why didn't they just leave? Imagine if you lived in Los Angeles and someone said, you need to walk from your house to Malibu right now. You have 10 minutes to leave. And you have a child, or you have your grandmother lives with you. And many times entire families live together. Imagine that. Like, I just don't understand how people aren't getting how just leave doesn't mean just leave. They're not going to be able to go back. Their houses are not going to be there when they get back. What do you do in that situation? Some people are saying, we're not going to be this. We refuse to allow ourselves to be part of the second Nakba. And to be honest, it's the third, kind of the fourth. But they refuse to do that. They refuse to be displaced. They refuse to be refugees again. Some of them for the third time. So.
Right. And just pride. I mean, staying in their homes just because they said, I'd rather die here than die being bombed out in the streets aimlessly. And so fleeing to the south doesn't really do anything, especially when Israel is bombing the south.
And not to, roll out the red carpet to Egypt, but I don't think that they should stand up and say, we're okay with another Nakba. Mm-hmm. We're going to just allow you to displace these people and annex Gaza. Like they definitely don't need to say okay to that. Yes. It's one of the reasons why many Arab nations have not taken in Palestinians, because there would be no right to return if they lose their refugee status. People don't understand the complexity of that. Mm-hmm. If they take in those Palestinians will not be able to go back to Palestine. People need to really grasp that.
I have to mention this because you mentioned that a lot of celebrities didn't know what they were signing on to. And I agree with you, because especially when you look at someone like Justin Bieber or Jamie Lee Curtis, who were posting images of destroyed Gaza and saying, pray for Israel or stand with Israel. And it's like, okay, if any aspect of your brain can actually wrap your mind around this image and think that this is Israel, you have no idea what's going on. But of course, they had to take those images down, and then they didn't post anything else. It's like, okay, if that horrified you, the leveling, the carpet bombing, and mass murder of children, if you saw that in that image and it really struck you enough to post that, why does it change when you find out it's Palestine? I mean, it's so obvious, Alana, and it's so sad, the amount of pressure. But again, I think that people don't want to put themselves out there too much like they may have before, because other than Gal Gadot, who's like the poster child, she tried to organize these screenings of like Hamas body cams, just like murdering people, I guess, and wanted to show this in Hollywood. I think at the Holocaust Museum, and I think it really fell flat. I don't think any celebrities showed up, and I think even she dipped out last minute because she was like, this is embarrassing. No one's coming to show up for this propaganda screening. And that's good, right? That at least people didn't want to participate in that.
Well, so it was supposed to take place at the Museum of Tolerance, which is kind of like a Holocaust museum. And yeah, she didn't show up at all. The spin control has happened right away. Right away, she didn't show up, and no other celebrities showed up to this propaganda screening. And right away, the spin control happened, and they said that they didn't show up because they were worried about their safety. Just the kind of conjuring of the possibility that there is a safety issue is supposed to make us all grasp our pearls, but an actual safety issue, a genocide happening. And I've seen more Islamophobia and anti-Palestinianism happening throughout the world than I've seen anti-Semitism in reaction to this, to be totally honest. There have been multiple instances of Palestinians or people who are supporting Palestine being accosted or hurt violently or, spoken to. There are many videos of people, Zionists, screaming horrible genocidal things at Palestinians, and people who work in solidarity. I could probably pull up my DMs and show you some of the horrific things that I've gotten in response to my posts from people supporting Israel. And I'm not constantly having conversations about how scared I am.
There is no reason for an ethno-state to exist, and it can't exist forever because of the problem of ethnically cleansing the indigenous population to maintain a Jewish majority. And that's the big problem with Israel that no one wants to address. And until that is addressed, Alana, there are going to be severe problems with how Israel functions and operates and quote unquote defends itself. One of the reasons that Israel hates Palestinians so much becoming popular, like you and your family, is because all Palestinians have a shared history that exposes Israel for what it is. Can you quickly talk about like your family's history? Because I'm sure you grew up with stories about what happened to your father and your family history in Palestine.
Sure. So much like many Palestinians, although some were ethnically cleansed in 67, my father and his family were ethnically cleansed in 1948. They lived in Safed. And there was actually a Hadid quarter of that city that was built by my family. It still exists. It's now, Safed's now called Sfat. It's a quite Orthodox Jewish city. And the buildings that my family built are still there. My father was born in 1948. As was tradition, my grandmother went to Nazareth, where her family was, to have her children so that her family could rally around her while she was giving birth. So she had gone to Nazareth to have my father. She took her children with her. And the family, the Polish family that was living with my family in Safed, had, while my grandfather was at work, had taken over the main house and were protected by soldiers. There wasn't an IDF then. It was the Irgun or Haganah, but they had surrounded the house and told my grandfather that he couldn't take anything with him, that he had to leave. My grandmother was also expelled and her family from their home in Nazareth. And she walked with her children and a donkey to Damascus. And they were refugees there. I think it was months later that she found her husband, my grandfather, and they were refugees for 14 years, multiple places all over the Middle East, until they eventually immigrated to the US. It was violent. The family that my family had allowed in to live in their home when they had no home, when they had been expelled from Poland, ended up taking his home, and they were forced to leave by gunpoint. So what we're seeing right now has brought up a lot for my family, my father especially. We've heard these stories over and over again of the way in which our families were violently expelled from Palestine. 750,000 families were expelled violently from Palestine in 1948. And I never thought I would see it again. I know that there has been a ethnic cleansing of Palestinians that has happened over the course of the last 75 years, but I never thought I would watch people being ethnically cleansed in the way that that my family was ever again. And it's been quite traumatic to watch. The world should be traumatized by what's happening to the Palestinians. And it's, these things are happening all over the world. This is happening in real time, right in front of us, all over social media. And it's mind-boggling to watch and mind-boggling to see the amount of support given for a genocidal ethnic cleansing that looks exactly like the one that you wouldn't have been able to see in 1948.
I want to just iterate a point that you made that I think is really shocking, is that your family was literally sheltering refugees from anti-Semitic purges, and then your family was forced to flee. I mean, it's just crazy. It's like, it just kind of just debunks that whole notion. It's like, even, historic Palestine, Jews, Christians, Muslims, like everyone lived in harmony. It's just incredible that happened. Like,
Yeah, I think, sorry, I think not to gloss over, like, nowhere is perfect. I don't think everyone was, holding hands
right.
around the world, and that there weren't any issues. I do think that some of the issues came about with the knowledge that there was a very high possibility that the creation of the state of Israel was going to force out anyone who wasn't Jewish. That did cause a massive amount of unrest in what was, I would say, a fairly peaceful place, where people of all different ethnicities and religions came. My family member, who Dahir al-Omar, who was one of the rulers under the Ottoman Empire, he built mosques and churches and synagogues all next to each other. They still exist in some parts of the country. Many of the churches and mosques have been boarded up or turned into hotels or something like that. But they were all built right next to each other because his idea was to welcome in all people from all religions into Palestine as a bastion, for people, as a safe haven for people. And to paint Palestinians as anything else but that has been an ongoing erasure of the actual reality of what Palestine was and is.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of pressure on all Palestinians. There always has been, of course, but I mean, especially in a post 9/11 world, to conform and just shut up and obey and don't talk about your oppression, as the Palestinian people have been enduring for so long. Your personal journey as a Palestinian American, especially having Irish in your blood too, like, was it always part of your family history and embedded in your upbringing, or was there like a catalyzing moment where you were just like, this is fucking crazy, the Israeli aggression against my people, and I never really understood it before?
Well, I have multiple degrees in political science, international relations, and diplomacy. So I do understand what's happening, and I have understood what's happening at a kind of a deeper political level for quite a while. But as a child, I was always told about what happened to my family and why they were in the US, that, they didn't just come there like a lot of people, and they didn't have the ability to go home. I think that was really ingrained in us. When my grandfather died, I was quite young. I think I was 6. And there was a lot of conversation around the fact that he would have wanted to be buried where he was born, in Palestine, and he was not able to be buried there. My father, who was born in Palestine, I'm very hopeful that he will, but right as of now is not able to be buried in the place where he was born. Sorry, that gets me every time. That has been, I think that's one of the hardest things for people, is watching their family pass away and not be able to do that in the place that they were born. I think that has been truthfully an eye-opening experience for Palestinians and others. I think I've heard from a lot of anti-Zionist Jewish people that hearing and understanding that has really changed their view, especially on birthright, which is very triggering for Palestinians. But I think for me, I always talked about Palestine. I never felt like, I felt like it was important to have a conversation around it. I do have a lot of activist family members. My cousin Lena is quite a big activist when it comes to Palestine. She took me to a Palestine rally when I was probably 9 years old, and I came back saying, hell no, we won't go, long live the PLO. And I didn't understand what I was saying at the time. But I do think, as far as having a grasp on what impact my social media could have, I don't know. I think in 2021, truly, I mean, I was speaking about it a lot before, but probably not to the level that I am now. I think in late 2020 and early 2021 with the storming of Al-Aqsa, which has happened multiple times, but it was very highly covered on social media. I think that was really kind of a like ancestral calling that I couldn't just make it kind of some of my life. I need to make it a bigger part of my life. It is important for me. And it's not just about freeing Palestine. I that sounds really, a lot of people don't believe it, but it really is. All of these people, these fights for liberation really are tied, intrinsically tied. And they're not just tied because no one can be free until everyone is free, but they're tied because the people who are perpetrating these genocides are all the same people. The people who are arming the people who are allowing for this to happen. Israel has a big part in a lot of the genocides that are happening throughout the world. They arm Azerbaijanis. They are involved in the Congo and Sudan. The U.S. has been fighting proxy wars in Africa for years, and they are making money off of our oppression. The stock market is a good place to take a look. If you want to know why this is happening, take a look at what stocks are going up right now and who's invested in those stocks. Because a lot of the people who sit on our Congress are invested in the stocks that are making money off the wars that are killing our people. So pay attention. There are many of the places where terrorists live also happen to have crude oil, also happen to have, minerals that are necessary for making of iPhones and technology, military technology, things of that nature. So there is a bigger picture. And for me, I want all people to see and understand that we can unite for collective liberation. We can liberate ourselves from the people who seek to separate us and to profit off our separation.
Very well said. Couldn't agree more. And it is interesting. I haven't heard this point raised nearly enough since all of this started on October 7th, which is the police. I mean, the police in America are trained by Israeli forces. There's an NYPD office in Tel Aviv. I mean, it's just this crazy partnership that can explain the increased militarization and the rabid nature of our police forces to assault Indigenous people and Black Americans on a regular basis here. And that really needs to be exposed. And of course, I mean, the root of this oppression is empire, is imperialism. And you just heard, I mean, Biden said it himself like a couple decades ago. He was like, if Israel didn't exist, we would need to create her. I like how they call Israel her, like anthropomorphizing like this genocidal maniac ethno-state as like a woman. But he was just like, we would need to create an Israel to serve our goals. Our goals of imperialism, because Israel is our colonial outpost in the Middle East. It's our eyes and ears, and we need Israel to serve the utility, to secure the oil, to secure the resources, to be our watchdog, our battering ram. It's totally cynical and disgusting. And this humanitarianism that's folded around what the raw reality and the horrifying truth of that partnership, it's sick, this liberal humanitarianism. I mean, to perfectly exemplify how grotesque this is, I just saw an Israeli soldier on the leveled plains of some of the ruins in Gaza holding an LGBTQ flag. And it says, I did this for love. And it's like mind-blowingly dystopian and Orwellian. And, there is a global movement. There's a huge, massive uprising of people all around the world. It's exploding. It's unprecedented. It's incredible. But it represents this stark contrast, like you're saying. Our Congress, our government is so out of touch, and they are so bought out. And just to really drive this home, I mean, check this out. 80% of Democratic voters support a ceasefire, while only 8% of their representatives do. 56% of Republicans support a ceasefire while 0% of Republican representatives do. I mean, wow. There still is this enormous disconnect between the ruling class and the people, and even corporate America. I mean, McDonald's handing out thousands of free meals to Israeli soldiers, Starbucks suing their own union for daring to express solidarity with Palestinian people enduring genocidal onslaught. It's mind-boggling, it's horrifying, but it really just shows how disconnected we are from the rulers, from our leadership. And were you surprised? I mean, even though I understand this fundamentally, Alana, I think that you do too, it still was shocking and horrifying to me to see Biden have such callous disregard after 4,000 children are slaughtered with our tax dollars to say there is no chance of a ceasefire. I mean, what was going through your mind when you saw him say that after this many people were killed?
I mean, honestly, what was going through my head was fuck him. And you can leave that in. I think what I realized, what I've known, but I think what a lot of people who really are on this side of history and have been for a while, have known that the people in power really don't give a shit about the people. The people in power are not doing this for the safety of their citizens. They're doing it to line their pockets and to keep their geopolitical power. This is about land, power, and money. And that's literally it. If you are sitting there thinking that those people their actions are out to protect you, I hope that you open your eyes truly. And that is really my conversation. This has to do with, I don't believe that the people who are in power in Israel are there to protect Israelis. I don't think that the people who are in power in the US are trying to protect Americans. I think that there is a larger power game, and that power struggle will take out anyone in its way, and you're the next one that it could take out. That's the thing. Anyone, it could be anyone. The Palestinians could be anyone. And I think that's why there's been such a beautiful solidarity with the Black community. There has been for a very long time. This isn't new, but it's been amazing to watch even more people come to this place because they understand that the people in power don't give a shit and can very easily subjugate you, oppress you, and will do so when they feel like it. And so I think not to call for a ceasefire is a disgusting reminder that they do not care for human life, and that their power position in the Middle East is much more important to them. And I do think that we really do need to use our power of the voting ballot, and we need to vote out all the incumbents. It's like, if they haven't come out already and said that they don't want a ceasefire, get them out, vote them out. And I'm talking about anywhere around the world. I'm not just talking about in the US. Use your voting power and vote people out, because if they don't care about those human lives, they probably don't care about yours either. And I think that's been a big wake up call for people. I think that has been what has brought a lot of people to this movement, to the Free Palestine movement, has been, holy shit, if they're really willing to allow babies to die, and they're really allowing tens of thousands of people to just be murdered and ethnically cleansed, then they could probably do it to us too.
Yeah, and seeing the crocodile tears being shed for Ukrainian children from our State Department spokespeople, when asked about Palestinian children, it's just like, well, civilians have to die. It's a war, right? Well, really, it's a war because one side doesn't have an army and the other side has high-tech weaponry and is bombing a caged people with nowhere to go. So I keep thinking, how could it get worse? And, first it was the hospital bombing, 500 killed. Then it was the refugee camp, 400 killed. And then it just became normalized, like, not to me, but I mean, it almost just seemed like people stopped having that unified outrage, like in the media, saying, how could this happen? This is horrifying. It just became like every day there's a new massacre with hundreds killed, and the death toll just continues to rise. And now it's the babies literally being pulled out of incubators, manually trying to keep them alive. This was the propaganda that was manufactured to consent for the Gulf War about Saddam. And this is like the most atrocious behavior imaginable, pulling babies out of incubators. And this is what is happening while the world watches. I don't know what it will take. I don't know if we have an answer to that. Like, if you haven't woken up now, if your humanity isn't shocked to the core with what you are seeing now, what will it take? What will it take for our leaders to step up? I don't know if it's just tens of millions of people refusing to move going to the houses of our representatives, going to the offices of our representatives, sitting there and saying, we are not going to move until you do the right thing, Alana. And I am so inspired by the movement that I'm seeing around the world, and my friends and colleagues who are in Gaza. All of them have been displaced, homeless. All of them have lost people. And when I ask them, what can we do? They just say, you just need to keep the pressure up, because it all falls on our shoulders. We are the children of the empire. And it's unfortunate because, yes, this is a problem worldwide with all the junior collaborators of the empire. But like, we're in the belly of the beast right here. And our government, if Biden said no, it would end today. And it's crazy that this is continuing. Do you have any last words of optimism, or even just, it doesn't even have to be that. I mean, because we don't have to pretend. I mean, any last words that you want to say?
I think my last words are, don't stop talking about it. It's truly, like, as you said, the people that I'm speaking to that are in Gaza and in the West Bank are saying, and Palestinians who are living all over the diaspora are saying, please, they're begging us not to stop talking about it. And there's no platform too small. If that means having a conversation at Thanksgiving dinner, or, DMing a friend, or posting to your Instagram, or going to a march, doing a sit-in, whatever it is, don't stop, because there will be movement if we don't stop. Hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people have turned out for marches, and it is moving the needle. It may not seem like it's moving it so quickly, but I promise it's the only thing that we can do right now, and we really need to do it. So don't stop talking about Palestine. It's the only thing that is giving any hope to the people of Gaza. So please keep asking for a ceasefire. Please keep talking about the occupation, and don't stop until we see some change.
And in West Hollywood isn't the easiest place to live. I just moved from there. It's a big Israeli stronghold. A lot of people who are dual nationals live there. Have you seen the sentiment changing just where you are? I mean, you're in LA. It's not that easy to discuss these things there. I remember seeing kids with IDF shirts at the playground where I was at with my son.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of people who felt like they didn't want to be political, or they didn't want to get involved, or they didn't understand. That was a lot of what people thought was, I don't understand, so I don't really want to get involved. It's hard not to understand what's happening now. It's hard to look away and act like you don't understand the death of babies, children dying, and women, children, and men. People, innocent people dying. It's hard to look away from that. So I have seen a lot of people who I never thought would speak out about Palestine actually speaking about it. I have run into people that I never thought I would see at marches. So I do think that, people call LA Little Tel Aviv. And I do think that the needle is moving. There's a lot more Jewish people who are understanding why they should be anti-Zionists. I do think that the solidarity with the Jewish community has been such a beautiful solidarity and so necessary for people to truly understand what is going on, to understand that if you go to a rally that's a pro-Palestinian rally, you're going to see Jewish people there. You're going to see indigenous people of all kinds. You're going to see Black people, white people, Asian people. You're going to see people from all different walks of life and religion. I promise you, if you drive by an Israeli rally, you're not going to see Palestinians there. So it's pretty easy to spot who the occupied and who the occupier are just in that way. So there's not a lot of solidarity from Palestinians in the Israeli camp, but there's a ton of Palestinian solidarity from Jews. And I think that that's been such a beautiful and amazing thing to see, because historically Palestine has been made up of a lot of different religions, and Judaism has been a huge, important part of it. And I think that it will also be part of the freedom of Palestine.
This is truly a moment that history will remember. We will look back at this moment from future generations and ask ourselves, not only how did we let this happen, but what did we do to stop it? Thank you so much, Alana Hadid. You are amazing. I'm so honored to call you my friend. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you. I'm going to cry. Thank you. I appreciate you, Abby.
Thank you so much. It was really great talking to you.